We go. During this, we're going to I'm going to introduce everyone, all the panelists who are joining us tonight, and they're going to talk about their background, how they broke into CS. And then after that, we're going to jump into the questions that you provided us when you registered. We have them all listed out. It's going to be very kind of conversational with everyone. But if you did not get a chance to ask your question in the registration form or something pops into your head, please post that in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat to answer those if we can during this. We only have 60 minutes. A lot of questions that, we have a lot of questions to go through. So we want to make sure we get through as many as possible. We are recording this so we can send it out afterwards. And if we miss your question, we're going to do our best to be able to answer them. And anything that's remaining, we'll definitely get you, help you out after this if we don't get to all the questions right now. So with that, let's jump into the introductions. Tonight we have a few people joining us. Again, really excited. We have Chloe, Meredith, and Elizabeth, who all have experience doing what everyone here is trying to do, break into customer success. I'm going to have them one by one introduce themselves and then talk a little about how they broke into the industry. And then we will going to jump right into the questions. Again, the most important part, what's most pressing to each one of you. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat. So with that, let's start with Chloe. Let's start with you as an introduction.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Chloe from Chicago, Illinois. I've been in customer success for about 2 years. I broke in randomly as a physical therapist. I was really burnt out from physical therapy and was seeking other options. So customer success seemed to fit right in, especially since it was a customer-facing role and I had experience there. I got really lucky breaking in. I happened to message someone who was a dietitian before and was hiring for a role in healthcare technology. So I was able to get in through that and was really excited to be working in healthcare tech. Right now, I currently work in incident management, so completely out of healthcare. And it's really exciting. And I say that to just let you know, like, you can apply other places besides like where your background is from, and you can come a long way. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm a senior CSM at Modernizing Medicine. It's an EHR platform, so in health tech. Before getting into a CS position, I was an occupational therapist. And my transition from occupational therapy to CSM was kind of a step-by-step process. So I went through an intermediary transitional role. First, I applied as a liaison to a rehab hospital so I could kind of showcase some other skills outside of just being a clinician. So it was kind of like a pseudo sales, marketing, account management role, which assisted me in kind of demonstrating some of those skills needed as a CSM. And then, got into that space by networking with other individuals, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, connecting, asking questions, and then getting a referral for the current company that I work for. And I've been there now for about 2.5 years.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hey everyone, I'm Elizabeth. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I manage the customer success team at Crossbeam, which is a partnership ecosystem platform. I've been in CS for a little longer than these two, like 6 years. So I offer a different perspective, but I really I'm very interested in like helping people break in and like sort of strategizing that transition. So I have a lot of perspective there. And as a hiring manager, I also come from healthcare. And fun fact about me, I did not graduate from college or have any relevant experience before breaking in. So my first job was in support at a health tech company, and here I am.
Thank you so much. All right, let's jump into it. First question, and again, these are the ones that were submitted by y'all when you registered. Let's start kind of high level. I think we think about customer success. A lot of people who are trying to break in might just want to know kind of, or maybe exploring, maybe they don't fully understand or know if like this is the right career for them. So they want to know like, what is it like being working in CS. So what do you think are, when someone's like thinking about breaking into CS or wanting to devote the time to like apply and, build their resume and all the different pieces that go into that, what are some things that they should consider when they are exploring a career in customer success? Some things they should know about this type of role, this career path, just like general, like here's what you should think about as you're thinking about this, possibly, pursuing this career.
I don't know, Chloe, do you want to start or
You can take it. I'll hop in after.
Okay. What I was gonna say is that I think first and foremost, you have to be comfortable having conversations with people, right? So I'm not gonna say that you have to be extroverted because you don't. I'm not extroverted myself, but you have to be comfortable having conversations, having sometimes difficult conversations, being really interested in people and wanting to help them reach their goals in whatever way they are, right? So your client moving in, in my case, in a software company, they have goals towards improving their understanding of our system and wanting to be more proficient and wanting to grow as a company and so forth. So I think if you are comfortable with those kinds of situations where you're diving in, you're really curious, enjoy solving problems, enjoy listening to problems, and having those kinds of conversations. I think these are the kinds of, CS is a good role and a good fit for that.
Yeah. Yeah, just to piggyback, as Meredith said, like curiosity, I think is huge. I think especially if you're breaking in from a different area, you want to be curious, you want to ask those questions, and that's how you get to know your customers. I can tell you that being on my first customer meeting and leading that, I asked a bunch of questions, because that's how you get to know your customer, what their goals are, and how to help them accomplish that. I also think you need to be curious as well about the product. You also want to be a product expert to some extent. So being comfortable with getting your hands on the product, demoing it, staying up to date with features, and then also not being afraid to say you don't know something, as well. And then I think being a partner is also another characteristic because you're going to work with a lot of people internally. So being able to connect with them and know how to talk to different people and what different things they need from you is also part of that. So you might talk to like engineering. I can tell you right now, engineering likes to know the steps of what broke and what the customer's questions are. So being able to handle that. And I'd say the last piece also would be to be comfortable with looking at data and telling a story. Those are skills you develop. I'm still developing them, but being willing to learn that.
All of those things are great. I think I would add, it's really important to have a deep understanding of what CS really is and how it maps to your experience right now. And to keep in mind that it's not just like a white glove support role, because CS has really evolved in 2024 and is really more about growing and retaining revenue. So understanding in your current role how you retain customers, and by retaining customers, retaining revenue, and how you contribute to the bottom line is a lot more like impressive and stands out a lot more on paper than just being able to train or write a good email or something like that.
And I'll also add that I think CS is often done differently across organizations. So you might, or hopefully you are trying to have conversations with people who are like one-on-ones with people who are CSMs, coffee chats, informal kind of conversations about what their day's like, kind of getting the mindset of a CSM. It's great to set up one-on-ones with people to ask them about, their job. But you'll find that people just see it. Customer success is done differently across organizations. A lot of different organizations have different maturity models, different processes, concept of what customer success is. Although we try to drive a standard for what it should be, right? We have a gold standard or try to have a gold standard for what that is. One thing I will say though is as a CSM, you really, especially in a startup environment, if that's what you're aiming to find a job within like a small company or startup, you need to be really comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty around just the product in general. Because if you're working at a startup, a lot of things aren't documented. and you're responsible for helping customers be successful. And sometimes that involves knowing the product inside and out, and if there isn't documentation or a lot of clarity around how things work, you got to be that person that's going to drive their own finding the answers to their questions. And that's working with product managers, working with sometimes engineers, working with different people, other CSMs on your team, being afraid to ask for help. I think that's when I started in my career, that was the one thing I really learned is like I just got to ask questions because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm trying to figure out, especially if you have a complicated product. We have a CRM. I asked a lot of questions and it was a lot of learning, and I'm still learning. So don't be afraid. You're going to be asking a lot of questions as a CSM, not just to your customers, good questions, but to your team and to other people across the company. All right. So with that, again, I think it's super important when you're trying to break into CS to understand get in the mindset of a CSM. So one of the questions I want to continue on this thread of what it's like to be a CSM, because this will ultimately help people, I think, break in because you can speak that language. What does a day in your life look like as a CSM? Kind of like, what does that like typical day, morning to night or evening look like for you?
I can start. So I've started as a CS generalist. I've just learned that term and I was like, that describes what I do perfectly. I come from the small startup space. So the startup that I currently work for, we had 22 people. And now we're part of a bigger company. But when I was a part of that startup as a generalist, I basically dealt with onboarding, renewal, adoptions, customer check-in, so keeping up with that. But on a day-to-day, I would say, you log on, check we use Slack, so you might check your messages, your emails, see if there's anything customers needed overnight or anything that was in flight that they got back to you on. And then you might have a meeting with your boss to chat about the day for like a stand up. Here's what I'm looking to accomplish. Here are the meetings that I have on my calendar. And then you might have a couple customer meetings where you're checking in with them. How are they using the product? Any product feature feedback? Are they not using the product as much? Does a conversation need to be had on how they can leverage the product? And then I might have a couple of internal meetings with product to bring this feedback back to them and let them know what customers would like to see, what's going well, what new releases are that I need to be aware of. And then I might also do some internal projects. So, for example, I worked on our onboarding playbook. So, building that out, making sure we had all the technologies we needed for it. And then also sharing that with the broader team so everyone knew. And then, you might also help with customer support. It is not always the case, but at a smaller startup, you might have your hands in that and helping to answer questions there.
I think, Chloe, you help with onboarding of your clients, right? Okay. And do you do training with them too?
Oh yeah, forgot that piece. You might
Yeah.
also have a couple trainings.
Yeah. And so I think your role and my role is different. So I think it's great to be able to point that out. My company is, I think, has a little bit larger of a CS team. I think we have about like 60, and we have them in different, I don't want to say phases, like different types of roles. So, we have a pooled team, we have a hyper care model that we call our key team, we have a strategic team, and we have enterprise. And so our
And
strategic
Meredith, real quick, can you just explain because they might not know? You said pulled model. What does that mean?
Pooled model. Yep.
Yeah.
So with our pooled model, it's more of like a reactive model. So clients that don't have a CSM assigned to them are in this, what we call pooled accounts. And so our CSSs or customer success specialists is like the kind of like lower level or break-in level for our CS teams. And support cases might go in, and if it requires a CSM, then a support case would get transferred over to a CSM for them to work on that case. So it could be that they need that they've expanded, they're adding providers, and they need to, do a conversion, for example, like a data conversion from one EHR system to another. And so the CSM would kind of help get that paperwork together, loop in other resources within our company to get that started. The key team, the hypercare model team, is one that would work with the client that's been kind of within like their first 45 days. So they're with their project management for 45 days. And then just following that, they would have a CSM at that point to help kind of, I like to say, like smooth out the rough edges, thinking from a healthcare perspective, if you've ever changed systems, there's always bumps. There's always providers that have a hard time kind of getting used to the new system. And so making sure that the client that just came on board has additional hand-holding. It's less of a kind of strategic CS position, and that they don't do annual business reviews. They don't have them long enough. They don't really work towards long-term value goals like Elizabeth was talking about. It's more of like less reactive, more smoothing out, trying to build relationships a little bit more like white glove service for a short period of time, and then they transition off to the pool. So my role is with the enterprise groups, so our largest groups. So I don't do any of the training. I don't do any of the onboarding like Chloe does. I get them about 45 days or so after their first implementation. And then most of my clients are in rolling phased implementation, meaning that they are constantly growing, adding new providers, adding new locations, acquiring practices. And so I have a project manager and a sales manager that is part of my smaller team that I work with on a regular basis, internal team, to make sure that that all goes smoothly. So these rolling implementations are kind of going along on the side. I don't really have my hand in that pot, but I know it's there. And then, so my day kind of looks like, we have Slack, I use Slack, I check messages, I look at emails, and then I may review some support cases just to see a general idea of how things are going. In my role, I don't necessarily answer support cases, but I like to chime in because ultimately the experience of my client affects whether they expand with us. Liz was talking about our role really as CSM is to not only just provide them this excellent service, but also to, they have this overall experience where they want to stay with us, they want to grow with us, they want to add more products, and then they want to tell other friends. So they want to, they are then a referenceable client. So I look at support cases, I review them. I will, work on my agendas for my meetings with my clients that week. My largest clients, I have weekly meetings with them. I sometimes have bi-weekly meetings with my other clients. So I'll look at those. We'll look at kind of planning ahead. Do I have a quarterly business review? Do I have an annual business review coming up? What product releases are happening? Making sure my clients know we have medical releases as well as product releases. So making sure they're aware of any new things that are coming out, making sure that they are aware of release notes that have been sent out, new product features or enhancements that they've asked for. I kind of highlight those when they're coming out for release. And then if we have any videos explaining kind of what's in the product, I present that as well. I'm also that advocate, like Chloe was saying too, kind of connecting our internal teams with my clients. So if a client's asking for something, but I need clarity on it, I might loop in. We have medical directors, so might loop in, set up a call between them to make sure that my client's getting, getting that best communication over to our medical directors to code what the ask is. We have client advisory board meetings, so I coordinate those. And then I kind of loop in our general manager over our different verticals. So I loop in our general manager as to how things are progressing with the large clients. And if there's any, highs, lows, any areas of concern that she can be aware of so that we can start addressing that before it becomes a risk for the overall vertical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth, your role right now is hiring man. You're a manager, right?
Yeah, we don't need, I mean, you don't need to
Okay.
know about my day to day. It's a
Yeah.
mess.
I think
Yeah.
though, from like there's a lot of things that are common though for any CSM. Most CSMs, like individual contributors working in your role, you're going to be doing a lot of customer calls, and then if you're a good CSM, you're going to be trying to be proactive and think about at a strategic level, how can you help your customers be more successful? And that could just be simply looking at the data, where are they struggling, how can you help remove friction points for them? You might have some tickets you have to fill out for your engineers, bug tickets. There's a lot of different variations to the role, but again, any good CSM is going to be doing a lot of listening to their customers. So that's why listening is very important. So let's just get to the big question. Because again, I think anytime you have like this type of event, there's always one question that is asked in different ways, but it's really kind of like the core, I feel like, that we can spend a good amount of time on is, and I'm curious in the chat to answer this. How many of you in the chat joining us tonight have very little to no experience like working in like SaaS, like software as a service? Like how many of you are trying to transition into CS from like a totally different background, and you're struggling with, how do I show like I can be a great CSM when I don't have like experience, direct, any kind of like direct experience? Okay. So I think a lot of it comes down to this. And so I want to kind of start with we can zone in on this, but like, what advice do we have for those who want to break in, who are just aren't confident showcasing like on their resume, like, hey, look at me, like how to stand out on a resume when you don't have direct experience? Like, let's just start the conversation. What advice do you have for those who want to break in from these types of backgrounds? And the people who listed this said they're coming from rehab, physical therapy. Someone said sales. Probably a lot of people coming from maybe hospitality or like just retail. So yeah, for those types, what advice do we have for them?
I would love to take this one. I have a strong point of view. But what I was going to say is like when you prioritize, like when you prepare your resume, right? That's what gets you interviews, your resume and your about me. Those need to be like in lockstep, and they really need to highlight how you are different than the sea of applicants here. So like I said in the chat, like really leaning on your domain experience in applications is really, really important. So Chloe mentioned like it's possible to get a SDS job outside of your industry. It's way more likely that you'll get one in your industry to begin with, because you know the buyers, you know their priorities, you know their pain points, you speak the language, so you have a little street cred with them. And that's really where I started when I was a new CSM. I think beyond that, like I was saying before, like not so luckily, like, but we do live in like a capitalist society. So everyone, no matter if you are a cashier at Target, all the way to a nurse or a PT, you contribute to the bottom line of your business in some way. So learning more about how you do and highlighting that on your resume, and highlighting how you build and leverage relationships on your resume as well. Will make you stand out from many applicants that don't have experience, because it'll show that you get it. So I'll stop there. One more thing I'll add though, I think I saw this in the questions. There were people saying like, oh, I don't have tech experience. You don't need tech experience. Most people are pretty tech savvy. Like I can go on the computer. You do need to know how the business model of the business you're applying to works, like SaaS, like how a typical SaaS company works, since you're going to be the one really like maintaining the revenue from those subscriptions.
Chloe, you're muted, FYI. Sorry.
Yeah, I got the little bar. I was trying not to, but it happened. Yeah, I would say also like knowing your numbers in the role that you're in. So what does that look like? You know, maybe like Elizabeth said, like a cashier at Target. How many customers on average do you check out a day? You know, what does that look like? Or trying to think, I was trying to get creative there. I lost my thought, but for that, or if you're in sales, how many sales did you close last quarter? What did that number look like? What other strategic projects did you participate in that brought in revenue? I can tell you as a physical therapist, I highlighted that I was able to go and do community outreach and acquired 5 new patients that way. I posted on social media and acquired new patients. So just like ways that you've done that, because that shows like you know how to talk to people and bring in that money at the same time. And that's the hardest part, but there are numbers. There's always numbers. You just got to get creative with it.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. I think getting in, I don't know that it was my resume that got me in the door, for example. So I feel like networking, so that you can at least get that first phone call. Your resume has to support your ability to get the role for sure. And I know at least for how we hire, um, definitely having that reference to get you in that first door. But I think that, especially coming from a therapy role, I think we undersell ourselves pretty frequently. There's a lot of transferable skills. We we develop goals, we develop care plans, we work with multiple different team members. If you aren't in a hospital setting, home health is a great example of, your team members aren't all in the same room when you have to communicate with them. So it's very similar to working virtually, as most of us are in this role. Being able to do that kind of teamwork while not being in person. So I think there are skills, if you're able to kind of put them out there. I think one of the areas that therapy may need to highlight that doesn't is the understanding of some tech tools, right? So you do need to have some proficiency in, whether it's Google Suite or Microsoft Suite, or, have you done presentations? Have you done any community work at outside of your role to highlight, any sales functionality, whether it's like network marketing, right? I mean, it's still a sales position. It is still valuable experience, and understanding, like Elizabeth was saying, and I think Chloe too, understanding the SaaS world, even if it's just recognizing like Netflix is a SaaS company, right? It's software as a service, it's subscription model, it's, the fact that paying for new customers is more expensive than retaining those customers. Growing your customer base from current customers is less expensive than, trying to find new customers. So kind of learning that, which is on, you can Google half of that stuff, is easy to find out. It's really kind of really grasping and understanding what role you're stepping into. I did some of that by taking like a success hacker certification. I did it more to understand SaaS industry, understand some of the terminology, less that I thought somehow this certification was going to get me a role. I don't believe that, no one pointed out, oh, you have, the success hacker CSM certification level 1. But it was more of understanding the role I was going to walk into, so that I could then speak to some of it intelligently versus just having my therapy mind.
Chloe, you have something you want to.
Yeah, just full transparency. Like when I was breaking in, I pinged Elizabeth like all the time. And we worked like on my resume and stuff. And I just along the line of like certifications, like I took a little bit of a certification and tried to find places to put the words. And it's nice sometimes to have someone help you round that out and make sure you're using that in the right way. So if you have a CS buddy who like can help you, or I would look online to make sure you're using those terms correctly, because I know I had trouble, especially after that cert, putting it into practice, but you'll get there. I think the point is to like try and incorporate some of that. Can you talk the lingo just to highlight that too?
So do we think then so it sounds like the general consensus for like certificates, because someone asked about this and which ones to do. I think one thing is, like you mentioned, Meredith, the certificate itself is not going to get you a role. It's not going to be the thing that says, oh, you got this role because you're certified. However, certificates are valuable to do if you, more so from the just the general foundational knowledge about CS, right? Like helping you think more like a CS, understand how, the industry works. Meredith, you did Success Hacker.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has anyone else done a certificate program before, and which one?
I've like dabbled with Success Hacker and Aspireship, I think way back when, but I never fully finished a certification. So you don't need to get a job.
No.
No, you don't. For me, I mean, I was an OT for about almost 20 years. And when deciding to make a move, I just wanted to know I was going to make the right move. I didn't want to go from, from an occupational therapist where I was just needing something different and then diving into a career that I was going to hate. Right. So I really wanted to go, okay, let me understand a little bit more about this. Let me talk to people, but then let me learn some language. Let me kind of dive in a little bit deeper, kind of dip my toes in the water and decide, do I really want to do this? Am I going to like it? Am I going to be fulfilled in it? Or is it just going to be a role that I'm in and I spend a lot of time to get into and then absolutely hate? So that was another reason why I decided to take the certification course.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just Success Hacker is affordable. You can do like a level 1 certification for like $99. So I think,
Exactly.
yeah, if you can afford it, I think it is worth it to do. Again, just for the understanding of like, I want to just build some foundational knowledge. And someone mentioned the coffee chats. I think those are super important too. And I'm posting a lot of stuff in the chat articles, but these are things that I think have been helpful for others. I posted an article on how to do an informal conversation, how to reach out to someone, set up an informal coffee chat with them, and questions you can ask them to pick their brain. Obviously, there's a lot of people probably reaching out on LinkedIn to like set up these coffee chats. So one part of this, and we talked about networking, and there was another question about how do I network effectively to break in. I think it's first starting to, as you're learning about CS, you want to learn out loud, posting about your understanding of customer success on LinkedIn. Start to engage with other people in this space and commenting, adding value to their posts, right? If you start adding value to someone else's posts, that's a way to start building a relationship with them. And then, you don't just want to ask on LinkedIn, like, hey, can you help me out? Hey, can you help me out? Like relationships are built on mutual, some sort of mutual reciprocity. Not to say like you're going to be able to offer them like some amazing value, but you can at least engage with their content and ask questions and be a person with them. And then at some point, ask if they have 15 minutes to chat with you. You have some questions. So I think if you can't, and I think people are willing to help too. Like a lot of people want to help out because they've been there, they've been in your shoes. They know, oh, it's tough, right? So if someone's asking for my help, be happy to help them out. So definitely, oh, what? Someone said I just read your comment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Joshua said about posting. So be active on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is probably the best platform to be active on in regards to like building and networking in the industry. A lot of people are active on LinkedIn. Claude, you have something else you want to add?
Yeah, as far as networking, I think I mentioned this before, and I mention it, I think on almost every piece of advice I give is show someone that you know them. Because, for example, like I post some helpful stuff for CS people who are breaking in. And sometimes I'll get the questions that I've already covered, and I can tell like that you haven't done your research either on what
Mm.
CS is or like, have I answered this before? Because then that makes it hard for me to engage with you because I have finite time. A lot of us have finite time on top of our jobs and wanting to help. So I think keeping that in mind and really asking those insightful questions is what makes you stand out. Because then I'll be like, hey, I saw a role and this reminded me of you because you asked that question, or things like that. But I think really diving in and knowing who you're engaging with, like Brandon said, like their posts, like don't be afraid to do that. I till this day will message a CSM and say, hey, I love your content. Like, do you mind to set up a coffee chat? Like, I want to hear more about your story, things like that. And yeah, I think networking's hard, but it can be done.
Yes. Anything else about networking? Any other advice you have or stories that you have?
I mean, I think I joined a few groups. I joined the clinician transition group. That was helpful. because there were some therapists in there that were CSMs. And if you're in that group, you're kind of willing to share, right? I mean, that's the purpose of that group. And so that kind of helped me figure out where to go. I mean, in therapy, if I wanted to get into tech, I didn't have anybody in tech as a network. There was nobody. So I started off by just looking at EHR companies and seeing if I had anything in common with anybody who worked there, to just go, hey, I saw we went to the same college, or I see you're a therapist, I am too. That kind of thing. That's sort of where I started, before I started finding some CS influencers that started posting in some of these groups, which was a lot easier, right? Because they're out there, and they are actively posting content on a regular basis, and then kind of following up with, like what Chloe said, following it, kind of reading it, understanding it, asking relevant questions in the posts. You're driving more people to their posts, which is ultimately what they're looking for. So providing some value to them. So then if you have a one-off question, you are providing valuable, you're providing value to their content, and then they, often can help you with a one-off if it seems like it's a question that maybe isn't already answered.
Yeah. And then someone, I think Chloe, it was you who mentioned, or someone posted a response and mentioned the star format. Was that you?
It was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think going back to, we talked a little bit about this, the resume and interviewing. What can you explain what the star format is and why it's helpful, a good format to use when you're interviewing?
Yeah, I think it just helps you stay organized and like organize your thoughts. I think a lot of people that I've interviewed in the past can be long-winded, and naturally my mind goes to like, God, is this how, like, it's not going to talk to customers, as much as I don't want to be like that, but it's just my question. So anyway, the STAR method is a framework you can use to prepare your answers. It's situation, task, action, and resolution. I don't know, it's just like ingrained at this point. But it shows that it also shows that you understand that there's like output to your actions, and that you can show, like, tell your own value story, essentially, which is what you're going to be doing as a CSM.
Yeah, I think that goes into what's really important, is you should be documenting as much as you can. You're building out your story by writing this stuff down. One actionable thing everyone should do, if you haven't done so already, is open up a Google Doc and start to write out all of your accomplishments in the past, whether they are directly related or just, transferable. Your job is to find everything that could potentially be transferable skills to customer success, how those can translate to a role in CS. So you should be writing all this down and building out that narrative so you can practice when you're interviewing, discussing that in a compelling way, because it takes practice to discuss what you've done in the past. What you mentioned, that framework, right? What happened? What action did I take? What was my thinking behind my action? What was the outcome? If you can tell that and have 5 really powerful stories of what you've done in the past, that's really persuasive, and that can separate you. Even if it's not like super, like I, saved a client that was worth $5 million. Like, not many of us have done that. But if you can talk about how you handled a customer complaint in your sales role, and how you delivered a great customer experience, and how you kept a even head, and how that translates to being a CSM, because you're dealing sometimes with upset customers and you have to be thoughtful, right? That can be a powerful story. So you need to build those things out. You need to think about that ahead of time and have a document that updating it on a regular basis. But you have to think about what that looks like in your current role. I did share a resource on ideas of how to do that, like things that you might have done in your current roles, whether if it's not CSM, if it's not a CS role, anything like transferable situations that you might find yourself in, that you should build out your story around, like how you approached challenges relating to those things. So you definitely need to have that document and all those examples written down.
Brandon, I did that when I was applying for positions. So I would take the job description and I broke it down. And I think, therapists, it seems like there were some rehab professionals here, we're used to breaking down tasks, understanding what is made up in that task, and then kind of like fill in how you might have achieved it, right? So if we're looking at providing annual business reviews to clients. Well, you may not know how to do an annual business review, right? But really, an annual business review is just a, a platform, a way to look at metrics, performance of a client, look at their goals, talk about planning, and then action steps, right? Well, that's a plan of care for a patient. So if you've ever presented anything in your life, you've met the qualification of presenting, right? If you're able to break down tasks and understand performance, well, you've kind of done that. You may not know analytics yet and how to read them, but that's a teachable thing, right? Most companies recognize that if I went to Chloe's company, I'm going to have to learn how to do an ABR for Chloe's company. Like my company does them a certain way. We have to grab our analytics a certain way. Chloe's will too. So understanding what the client needs are, and then going, okay, here are the goals of the client, being able to ask the questions, be curious, and then breaking down those goals and presenting them. So very similarly to how I just said, this is an ABR and an example, that's kind of what I did with job descriptions. I broke them all down and I said, okay, ABR, check. I've done X, Y, and Z. And just like you were stating, Brandon, kind of breaking down those experiences. How did I grow, market an area like Chloe was mentioning about home health and using social media? And there's many ways to do it. It's just identifying in your brain kind of how you can do it in a unique way to translate over to CS.
And I know this was one of the questions. I don't mean to shift gears kind of, but transitioning from like another position within, like, let's say you're in a tech company and you're in sales and you want to transition into CS, or this goes for really anything. I'm sure Elizabeth can also attest to some of this too, but don't be afraid to poke that team. You have a direct link to these people, and let them know, like, hey, I'm curious about what you do. Can I attend some of those customer calls? Can I see, like, how do you capture customer information? Get curious. I think that's the best way to show you're interested. And lean on them. I think that's what I've heard from almost every person that has transitioned into a different role is I poke them, I join their meetings, I let them know that I wanted to be there. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in there too.
Thank you. All right, one more question, and then we're going to go into what I just dubbed now as rapid fire because we have so many questions we need to get through. All right. So I just want to bring this up. I think it's something that we should talk about because the industry is in today's market, it's even more challenging to break into CS. I think, I just want to be real because the industry is not in the best. The layoffs are happening a lot. CSMs are losing their job, so there's kind of like this downward effect of people applying for roles, even like maybe with that they wouldn't have applied for before, like less experience required. They're like it's like a level down sometimes. Not to say it's not possible to break in. Like I want to make sure it's possible. Anyone here can do it. It's just it's challenging, right? But there is an opportunity here. What are your thoughts on the kind of sideways approach to breaking into CS, which is basically through support? Is it wise to maybe target a support role and then using that foot in the door to prove yourself and then eventually switch over to CS because you'd have the product knowledge, you'd have the relationship with people on the team and the company, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a lot, like, honestly, it's a lot more realistic depending on your timeline. Like if you're willing to, if you want to move quickly, you might be more competitive for a support role or even an SDR role, like an entry-level sales role, entry-level operations, et cetera. Otherwise, you may be looking at a very long search if you're only targeting CSM. Just to be realistic, I had an opening in October. I got like, I was open for like a week. We got like 1,500 applicants, I think. I was getting former managers of CS. I was getting directors, team leads. I was also getting people that had never been a CSM in their whole life, or like people that didn't live in this country, so it's really like a mixed bag. But I think it's worth considering like a side door, to Brandon's point.
Oh yeah, I took a I'm sorry, Chloe. I took a lower entry CSM role because I knew, and I took a huge pay cut. I mean, but I was realistic and I knew I could prove myself and I knew I just needed to get my foot in the door. And I've had what's it, two promotions in 2 years. So I think, you can do it. And that's what when people reach out to me, I say that too. I'm like, look, if we have a support role open and you can deal with it for a year, do it. Prove yourself. And then once you're in a company, it's a lot easier to move around than it is to get in.
Mhm.
And I echo exactly what you said, Elizabeth. I was talking to our VP of customer success and bringing her referrals. And she was like, we have such a large pool of applicants that are really qualified applicants. It's very hard to get another referral in there. So
Yeah, my referrals are not even like getting interviews now, like unless they're like a dream candidate.
right.
So
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a downer because I feel like, I mean, for me, I had so much to offer and I was so thankful that at the time my med was not thinking that healthcare background was excellent experience. And quite honestly, the only reason why I got the role was that I had that transition experience where I was like a pseudo sales marketing account manager. We've had a change in our leadership and they do see the value because of myself and a couple of other people that kind of that got into a CS position and have shown how much value there really is to having that background and not just having a sales background. So for our team, we had a lot of people post sales, that were in sales previously that kind of came over or were a teacher and then came over as an educator. So like as someone who trained on our product. Lots of people transitioned from healthcare into our training team and then into CS. So we've had project management transition into CSM. So lots of pathways.
Yeah, and I think just the last thing I'll highlight on that too is that it is a long game right now, as everyone's saying, and I don't want to discourage you from applying, but also get very creative. Start being proactive rather than reactive. Like if there's a company you see that you want to be a part of, engage with people in that company. Like start, filtering roles that you're like, I wonder what they do. Talk to them. That's the best way in, because once you have someone, you can tap them on the shoulder when a role does become available and say, hey, we connected. Like, I'm really interested in that role, in this role. And kind of have like a show me you that you know me thing going on and can really rely on that. Because then they're able to vouch for you. Referrals right now are getting higher interview rates than just applying alone. So you kind of have to lean on your network a little bit. So
100%. I wouldn't have gotten hired. I wouldn't have even I mean, I sent out so many, so many resumes, and nothing. And then I, had two, people that I had reached out to and I networked with, and they put in a referral for me. And then I got interviews from that.
What about applying, or what about reaching out directly to the hiring manager and bugging them? Or not bugging them, but like showing them why that you should have an interview at least.
I mean, the person would have to be like a really solid, like no-brainer candidate. And what I mean by that is that you need to get your story like down. You need to do research on the company, on the solution that it offers, and how you fit into that story and how you can help me make help make my life easier as a person trying to fill this role. So that would be my ask. I cannot get on a call with you. It's just like not scalable or feasible, but I can answer general questions. And if you are able to tell me like, hey, this is why I'm a good applicant. This is why like I was born for this role and here's why, and I'm really interested in the problem you're solving. That will make me more likely to say like, hey, recruiter, please take a look at this applicant.
So basically tread with caution. If you are good, if you have your story down pat, you've practiced it, you feel confident it is compelling, that could be potentially a strategy that could get them
Yeah.
an interview.
That's
But
it.
just
Also,
don't just willy-nilly start reaching out to hiring managers if your story's half baked and you're not prepared.
yeah. And show interest in the product. So a lot of people will be like, hey, like, you know, you work at a tech company, I'm tech savvy. Like that, it needs to be a little deeper than that. So that goes a long way. Most tech companies have case studies on their websites, have sort of like solutions by persona. Like my company sells to sales teams at SaaS companies, but also marketing, blah, blah, blah. Pick one of those out and be like, you know, the sales use case is really interesting. And here's why I could support it. I have, you know, I was an SDR after college 6 years ago. Like just something to like connect your experience to the problem that we're solving. It goes a long way.
Or if you have domain experience, adding a thoughtful conversation around that and how that, you know, it could be really related to kind of having that little connection with the hiring manager. All right,
And
rapid
those are the
fire.
roles you should be reaching out for, by the way. Like those are the ones where it's like, hey, I'm a no-brainer. Please look at me. Not every single role. It's a big waste of
Okay, so that's a good point. So you might have a better chance of connecting with the hiring manager with that extra domain experience and showcasing that when you're reaching out to and being thoughtful. Okay, so we are almost at time. Let us ask a couple more questions, and this is like 15-second responses for these questions. Okay, are you ready? Okay, Elizabeth, I know you mentioned some of these. Just other quick skills or things you're looking for when you're actually interviewing. Anything else you want to mention that you look for in a person applying for their first role in CS?
I'd say ability to learn, ability to navigate ambiguity well, strategic, data-driven, probably other stuff, but I'll shut up now.
All right, how can I weed out bad jobs that I don't want to apply for? Like, is there a way to know if like a role is going to lead to nightmare or a company is not going to be a good fit for me?
Yeah, Glassdoor. I'm sure there's other things out there too, but read the reviews. What are people saying? Yeah, and ask good questions in your interviews, as Elizabeth said. You can tell a lot by that.
What are one or two questions that new people trying to break into CS often fumble when they're interviewing? Like they don't get right. They just fumble it.
I
I
think
think me,
like
it's like why you're trying to break into CS. They just don't know why, like the why behind their pursuit, but that's just my thought. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Meredith.
no, I was gonna say I've seen that. I've also I've seen people who just don't even really understand the company. Like they haven't done their research, so they don't even know the role that they're getting interviewed for. Um, you know, reaching out to people who also work there to understand the company, right? So before I was interviewed for ModMed, I reached out to somebody for ModMed and I asked a lot of questions about ModMed. So I knew what I was applying for and I understood the larger view of the company. Because then you understand the why of the company, right? Like you understand what they're trying to, what their goal is.
I just want to add to that too. Like those are really important things, but also like positioning yourself like as a transitioning CSM or someone breaking into tech or like those sort of buzzy words. It, you know, look, it immediately tells me that you've never been a CSM before or like that you know, that kind of thing. And that's not the end of the world and you have to start somewhere. But instead, like position yourself like someone who was again born to take this role at this company and solve this problem that your company solves. This is just a natural transition from you as a physical therapist, a target cashier, whatever, to CS.
Yeah. Like you're already doing it. You just aren't named that.
Okay. I think we got through most of them. Let's see. How about anything that you recommend in regards to if you get an interview, do you recommend having a solid follow-up or is that just going to get lost in the weeds when you're trying to like send a follow-up email to the person you interviewed with?
I know this is more of like an Elizabeth question, but I can tell you as the candidate, I've always sent one, and whether it was to the recruiter or not, because you can always poke them later when there is a role open. If you reach out and they know who you are, it has served me wonders in getting interviews and connecting.
What about the pre-interview? Is there a space for a pre-interview like touch point? Like, hey, I'm excited. Here's why I'm excited for the interview. Like, here's my why, just so you know why I'm coming in this, like my thinking coming in this interview. Is that valuable? I'm just thinking from like a touch point. If you want them to remember you, like a couple different touch points, what do you think about that? Or is that just annoying?
No, I think in general, like outreach, I've seen hiring teams comment on thank you emails and things like that, you know, and say like, wow, it's really crazy. Elizabeth sent me a thank you email. And it can move the needle if everything else is equal. I would say if you're going to send something in advance of a meeting, it would be more meaningful to look that person up on LinkedIn and say like, hey, I see that you are, the VP of sales at Crossbeam. Insert relevant thing about their job here and how you can make their life easier. Again, you'll see this theme. You are the solution to what ails them. You can help them grow revenue. So that's how I would do that. Don't like send it to the recruiter. They don't care. They just want to know like if you're authorized to work in the US or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we are at time. So last closing remarks, anything you want to give, the supporting words, supporting, encouraging words, advice, anything else we didn't talk about, like just let's go through and just last remaining comments. Let's start with you, Chloe.
Um, I would say don't be afraid. Don't let anything you see on LinkedIn scare you into you not pursuing it. It just might take longer. And also just put your best foot forward and step into the role. Like you are going to do this. And if that's what you're going to do, like Elizabeth said, own that. And it shows like in everything. And I know this is controversial. Um, Posting on LinkedIn also does help. It is not required, but if you're like doing all this work, you can showcase it on LinkedIn. I've had recruiters and hiring managers like peruse my LinkedIn and say, hey, like I saw that you did XYZ. Like, are you available for a chat? So just an idea. It's not needed.
Meredith.
Yeah. I mean, I know that everyone's really kind of, stated multiple times that networking is very important, but I'll give you an example that just happened maybe 2 weeks ago. Our VP of CS saw that I was connected with an OT that had applied for a position, an open position at our company. And she reached out to me and she said, hey, what do you think of this person? The person didn't ask me to put in a referral, which I'm like, shame on you for not asking me to do that. But didn't do that, but reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think? And then I responded. I looked over the resume of the person. I said, oh yeah, hey, I have talked to her. I do think, she may be good. So what you do on LinkedIn does matter. I know our VP has looked at it. They look at your connections. It will help you get in. It will help you understand. It's like doing your homework, right? It'll help you understand what you're about to walk into. And then I would say personalization. I've sat in on team interviews where we had applicants that really personalized their their presentation to us. So used us, took our pictures from LinkedIn and plopped us in as clients. And it really won us over. It became a part of like our team. It made us go, you know what? They paid attention. They made this fun. They made it unique and their own and set themselves apart.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Elizabeth.
I'll just do my like classic spiel. I think first of all, I agree with Chloe, like don't be scared. Like I know I've been kind of doom and gloom, but there are lots of ways into CS and it's a very rewarding career. But what I was gonna say is it's 2024, the economy is not great. I would say if you want to like upskill and you have time, it's not a bad idea to learn like about sales methodologies, discovery techniques, becoming comfortable asking questions that expose customers' pain, so that you can be the solution to their pain. So I would just add that on top of all of the other great things that we've discussed today. That would really help me help someone stand out too.
That's a good point. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. This hour went really fast. Hopefully this was valuable for you and helpful in some way, encouraging. But we hopefully run more things like this in the future. I will be sending out the recording. So if you had to step away and couldn't watch the whole thing, you will get the full recording shortly here. But again, just wanted to say thank you so much for attending. And we hope to see you at our next event at CS Insider. Everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you.